Welcome to the Big Life Podcast, where we help you live with intention, lead with impact, and build a life that's meaningful behind the scenes, not just online.
Right on. Good to see you, Neal. And for our listeners, for our family, today's episode is about a shift that every leader must make. And honestly, Neal, it's one of the hardest. It's about letting go of the version of you that got you here so that you can become the leader who can take you there.
And Robin, thank you. It is an honor to be here with you. And here's what I love. I'm going to share a little insider information with our audience. As we were individually brainstorming topics for our next few episodes, this topic came from each of us at the same time. So we know how important this idea is, but maybe we have forgotten about it up until this point in our lives or even in the year. So if you've ever felt stuck, stretched, or like you're hitting an invisible ceiling, this conversation is for you.
Welcome to the Big Life Podcast, where dreams aren't just imagined. They're built, brick by brick, belief by belief. Hosted by Neal Oates Jr. and Robin Lewis, this show is your invitation to discover your amazing capabilities, invest in your growth, and unleash your potential in ways you've only dreamed of. Join Neal and Robin as they dive deep into stories, insights, and tools designed to inspire you to show up big, live intentionally, and give yourself away for the betterment of those around you. Get ready to rise to what you're truly worthy of. The Big Life starts now.
Right on. Because at every level of leadership, your identity has to upgrade before your strategies do. So, you ready? Listeners, you ready, Neal?
I'm ready, sir.
Let's go. Let's go, sir.
So, Robin, I think the first thing we need to do is set the stage, right? You talked about just now this leadership ceiling. But in one of our conversations, you said something recently that hit me hard. And it's that your identity is the ceiling of your leadership. Now, here's what I want to tell everyone. That's a heavy statement for me to hear. But would you please elaborate on what you mean by your identity is the ceiling of your leadership?
It's a great place to start, Neal. You know, most leaders think that their breakthrough, their next breakthrough will come from a new tactic, maybe, or maybe from a new hire or a new system. You know what I mean? If we can just implement something new here, that will help us to go to that next level. But more often, what we really need as leaders is a new identity. The version of me that built my early success, you know, the hustler, the grinder, the guy that was out there all day doing everything, you know, the do-it-all guy. I could not lead the next level of growth in the same manner. I had to become someone different.
All right. And so a couple of things there before we even continue, Robin. That means that in order to birth something, that something might have to die. And for those of us who are here on the Big Life Podcast listening to this episode, maybe we've made it to a level of success that we don't want to let go of, that we don't want to say, but it's good enough. Because that's going to require, as Robin is always talking about, that level of self-awareness. And so that's big. And here's why. Because we celebrate what got us here, right? And maybe some of us right now, this time of the year, in our lives, our relationships, or our careers, where we celebrate this thing, and everyone likes celebration. And we're celebrating, Robin, our discipline, our hustle, our resilience. But sometimes those become the exact things that are holding us back. It's almost like our strengths become our limitations.
Wow. That's exactly right. I think that's true for every business owner. I think it's true as a parent, as a leader, or a person with a dream. There's always a moment when you realize that I can't go to the next level as the same person that I've always been. If I could just share very quickly, as a parent, when our daughter became an adult and was living on our own and so on, we had to change our approach as parents. And the reality is, if we didn't, then we're not going to have the same results. If we didn't, we're going to actually keep our role, keep our influence as a parent back. We're going to be in the past.
And Robin, I can only imagine the relationship dynamic with you, Edna, and Jillian had you all not moved to that next level of relationship, next level of parenting. Otherwise, a couple of things. We could start raising dependent adults, or we could raise adults that want nothing to do with their parents because they were stifled, right? And that's not an easy thing to do. And that's just an example as a parent. But the same thing as young people, as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as leaders, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be required. So let's talk about something that you just mentioned, overcoming, Robin. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to lock in right here, because this is where we're going to talk about that identity trap, right? When old strengths become new barriers. And we often think, and we hear it all the time, well, this is who I am. God made me that way. But really, let's talk about that trap right now. And you know which one I'm talking about. The moment when what used to work stopped working. What does that look like for leaders, Robin, when, I mean, it was successful? My thought process was successful. My systems, the processes that I use, the methodology that made me number one is now this thing that has stopped working. What does that look like for us as leaders?
Yeah. So, Neil, that looks like frustration. Like, why am I stuck? Have you ever been
Robin, you
there, our
you need to
listeners?
get you need to get out of my business, Robin. Before you talk to the audience, you and I had this conversation. Come on. Go ahead and
Yeah.
just hit me like you don't love me, but I know this is all out of love, Robin.
Well, hey, listen, it affects all of us as leaders, Neil. That's the reality. I'm saying the same thing to you. I've experienced this without a doubt. And I actually think it's something that we experience at each new level.
Yeah.
If you ask me, right? And that's been my experience. I think the other thing that looks like is fatigue. Why am I working harder but seeing less, right? Why am I working so hard but it seems I remember crying, literally crying out to God one day in my office. Like, why is this not happening?
Yeah.
And I felt like I was pouring my everything into it, right? So that's another thing that it might look like. Why am I working so hard but seeing less? Another one is it might look like fear. Like, am I losing my edge? And it's subtle because the old version of us, the old version of you was successful. But now that version has become the bottleneck to your future.
And so it's the identity version of what got you here won't get you there. And we hear that so much, but now we're looking at the identity that got us here won't get us there.
Exactly. That's a good way of putting it. So you outgrow your identity, but you still live in it, right? You're still living in the identity, but you've now outgrown it. Leaders cling to the old versions because they were rewarded for them. That the old version got them where they were. But the new level, here's the point. The new level requires new thinking. It requires new habits. It requires new environments. And if you didn't get a chance to listen to that episode that we put out just a bit ago on environments, I would encourage you to listen to that episode. Neal essentially shared some great thoughts around changing our environments. But the point is that we need new belief. We need new thinking and new belief and new habits in order to go to that next level.
Robin, right now I'm living in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, but I still consider myself a country boy from Alabama. And so, as you talk about how we outgrow our identity but still live in it, that goes to the country boy in me. And I think of the cicadas or maybe the locust that you all might hear, where they have this shell and they have to shed this shell in order to be able to grow any bigger. Otherwise, they will get stuck and they won't be able to progress. So since I'm here in Fort Lauderdale now, I'll think of the hermit crab, right? So if it's me, Alabama boy, we're thinking about the cicadas and the shell that they shed. But here it's going to be the hermit crab. A hermit crab as it grows, it must shed the old shell so that it can grow into something bigger. And then it must be exposed for a season, Robin, while it's looking for that new shell, that right fit. And sometimes leaders are afraid that changing is a betrayal of who they were. They can say, well, no, I've worked hard to become this person. I've worked hard to become this leader, to get these accolades. But it's not betrayal. In reality, it's evolution. But evolution is another word for change, right? And we know the relationship that most leaders, most people have with that dirty word change. We don't like it.
Like it. So I agree with it. And reinvention honors your past. So it says, thank you for getting me here. And now it's time for me to lead differently. So it's not forgetting or betraying the past. It's actually honoring the past and saying, yes, I'm glad that we got here and we did well. But now to go to that next level, here's what we got to do. Here's who we need to become.
And Robin, I'm so glad that you just mentioned this because a lot of us, it is not just an internal feeling of betrayal, but it might be coming from those voices that love us, that care about us. And so my wife and I, we were just having this conversation, and we often talk about her hair. My wife's mom loves long hair, and my wife had to go through this reinvention. She had to let go of the old identity that hair equated her worth or her value. So now, my wife, she has a short hair. She loves it, the pixie cuts. And she's like, oh, this is who I am. But she has to make sure that she communicates to her mom that me cutting my hair doesn't mean that I'm cutting who you helped me to become. And we're just talking about hair because it could seem like a simple thing. It could be something bigger than that for you as a listener or viewer. Maybe it's something deeper that you're going to have to shed so that you can lead yourself differently and maybe even lead your family differently. So when Robin talks about we're honoring our past, make sure that you truly accept that, because here's what we have to remember as well, that when we talk about your story, when you had to shift your identity. And so this is where I want to talk to my brother, my friend, my colleague, and my partner in progress. I'm going to ask Robin. We aren't just talking theory here. This is the beautiful part about the Big Life Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We're not just going to be sharing things we read in a book. You've lived this. I'm going to ask you, if you would, if you're comfortable doing this with our audience, talk about your insurance agency days when you realized you were at the ceiling of your identity and that some changes had to be made.
Yeah. There are several times that has happened, and I'll just share two real briefly. One is that it was a big turning point for me where, the agency grew. I was out there hustling, I was doing it all, and I was doing it well. And we had people around me, but I was still kind of like the rainmaker. I was still kind of touching everything. I was still kind of, the heartbeat, and the problem solver and sort of the engine, if you will. But when we grew, that identity that built the success that we had there couldn't sustain us going forward. And I shared with you, it actually got to a place where I literally had to pull back. And, my team needed a leader, right? They're not a machine. They didn't need somebody that was out there just kind of hustling. They needed somebody to step back and be a leader. And I had to shift from doing everything to designing leadership. And so that was one sort of identity shift that had to take place. I say to a lot of the business owners that I serve, that I either help with in some consultancy or as a coach, as their coach. Most business owners like myself didn't sign up for leadership. When we talked about getting into business, we didn't sign up for leadership. But leadership can put a ceiling. The lack of or the improvement of, development of leadership affects your business, right? John Maxwell says the law of the lid says that leadership puts a lid on your potential, period. Mm-hmm. But Neal, the other part that I would share, as I went through that process and we went into developing structure and we hired a manager and we started developing people and we were making progress in that regard. I'll never forget another point in time where We had Neal during this point in time. I don't think I've shared it much with you. I don't think I've shared much about this publicly, actually. We got to a place where in 1 year we lost like 40% of our team. And really big turnover. And one of the people that was actually with me for many years, I got a chance to sit down with that person and ask them, like, what's happening here? Why is this happening? And one of the things that had happened is that as I was trying to find this new identity, what I did was I sort of was trying to empower a leader of the organization at the time, and I just kind of left that leader to kind of take care of things. I just left that leader to take care of people. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what I did also is and how it came across to people is that I didn't care much about them anymore. That I also kind of left them. What needed to happen is my relationship with them needed to shift a little bit in terms of how that operated. But I was learning this new identity and really didn't know that what I was doing was coming across to them as showing up as somebody who didn't really care much anymore about them. And it was simply because I was trying to empower others. I purposely was trying to stay back to allow the others to sort of take that role and to lead. But here's the point. As a leader, you're always caring for the people. And there is maybe a different way now in which that shows up, and maybe that might show up to a fewer of the people within the organization, but it still needs to show up. That's another example of how I needed to actually shift my identity and how I showed up.
And so, Robin, that's the shift right there, right? From achiever to being the engine, the machine, the driver, the everything, to the architect. And now, I'm going to ask you just a little bit more. Was that an easy transition for you? Were you nervous? Was there any fear attached to it? Go ahead.
It was scary, Neal. Of course, it was also frustration based upon what I just shared with you there. We went through some tough times there, man. Like I was like wondering, what is going on here? And, letting go of that old identity felt like I was letting go of control. I felt bad. I'm that people pleaser. So you can imagine how that made me feel to hear them say that. I was definitely uncomfortable, man. And, on the other side, the other side of identity work, though, is capacity work. So I grew. So in that process, I became a better leader.
So, Robin, I love when you say on the other side of identity work is capacity work. And so I'm from the school of we always look at cul-de-sac talent versus capacity talent, right? Is it someone who can only do a few things and that's it? Or do they have the ability and willingness to grow? And so something that we look at as we're going into this identity shift is a willingness to be uncomfortable, a willingness to let go of control, a willingness to step out into that scary but necessary realm. And so now I would love, because I know this is a process. It's not an easy thing. Like we talk about it, even in hindsight and retrospect, and people might say, oh, yeah, that's all Robin had to do. But he's coming from a place of knowledge and experience and wisdom. But would you be willing to share maybe some of the identity shifts that we're gonna say almost every leader must make? If you would share some of those shifts, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yes, sir. I appreciate the opportunity here and to share this with our podcast family. So one is achievers to leader, right? So you have to go from achieving to leading. We talked a little bit about that already. Achievers get things done and leaders help others get things done. So if you think about the example that I shared, I needed to help the leader that I was empowering to make sure that people were being cared for, right? And so I needed to help them. And if you're always the hero, then you will never create heroes. And so the idea is to create heroes.
So, Robin, right there, when I hear you say that, right, we want heroes around us, right? We want to be the Avengers, but that move right there requires trust,
Yeah.
right? So you're having to trust your people, you're having to trust the process, and trusting that growth comes through others.
Yeah.
And as an achiever, many times we will look and say, well, no one can do it as good as we did. We built this. Besides, this is why we have all the plaques on the wall and all the awards, is because we are achievers. So now I'm having to trust my people. I'm having to trust my process, and I'm going to have to trust that there is growth on the other side of working with and through others. So that's a great shift one. So now we've already talked about from achieving to leading. Are you prepared to go into shift number two, Robin?
So shift number two is from being the worker to the designer, right? From the worker to designer. So what got me to the initial stage of where we had that first sort of where things kind of blew up was hard work. I was really out there putting in some long hours and doing hard work. But what gets you there on the next level is designing systems and creating and developing and doing performance based upon culture, and it's about clarity, right? So now you're going from the worker of hard work to the designer.
And so, Robin, let me jump in here because what you're saying is so true. Now, once again, ladies and gentlemen, we have the benefit of looking at this in retrospect. But what we look at when we're building, because many of us, business owners, leaders, families, we want to build an empire. We want to build this big fortress. But hustle, in my opinion, builds a foundation. But design builds a future. It's going to actually give us something that will live on and be bigger than us. And that's what we are keen on here on the Big Life podcast. So now, Robin, we have gone from achiever to leader. We've gone from worker to designer. And now I would like for you to go ahead and take us through shift number three, because maybe some of us have already gone through shift one and two, and we think, well, this is as good as it gets. I can't shift again. I've already made it to the mountaintop, but not from your experience. Go ahead, brother.
Yes, sir. So we go from control to identity centered leadership. So what we're
Okay,
talking about
now,
here
no,
at that,
no, Robin, right there, you just blew our mind, because we thought that control was the way we had to get there. And now you're going in a totally another level of this identity. I love it. Continue, sir.
yeah, and it's so that's why sometimes when people look and they say, well, it's where I'm at right now, I'm at a much better place to lead. Oh, just think about simply as a parent. Like I actually said this statement. Somebody said it to me and I concurred with them that no, you know what it was, Neil? This person actually had two kids that were in their 20s, and they had one that was like 6 years old, 14 years later, 6 years old. And what he said to me, this is the dad talking, what he said to me is that he's in such a better place now to parent the
The
6 year old,
6 year old.
right? And so what happens is that because he's coming now from who he is. He's not coming from what he's doing as a parent. He's coming from who he is. He understands the role as a parent. He understands who he is. And that's where he's coming from now at this new level. Leaders don't rise to new strategies. Leaders rise to new self-belief. And so he believed in himself in a different level of parenting because of the new identity that he has as a parent. It's such a good example. I know we're talking about business and professional and that area of our lives as an owner or a leader, but it's so relatable to understand it when we think about it as a parent, and it's
Yeah.
real too in parenting. And so as parents, we can apply these same principles. And so it takes a new self-belief, and that's what we rise up to.
And I love everything you just said. And here's why. It's because every leader, every parent, every person has two battles. And you and I were talking about some of these battles before we came on air. One is the external challenge. It's that stuff that we see outside, maybe that pressure that's coming to us from those external sources. And then the other is the internal identity. And if you've been around the sun any number of seasons, you start to know that you've got those two battles, the external challenge and the internal identity, and really having to make decisions and to navigate between the external and the internal, that can be exhausting but necessary work for any leader.
It's so true, man. And the internal one is the one that determines the outcome. That's the reality. That's where you and I need help in our lives, and that's where you and I help others in their lives. You know, we have business owners that might get to a place where they're stuck or they feel stretched or overwhelmed. And a lot of times what we come back to helping them to do is to rebuild belief,
Yep.
right? Because it's that internal struggle, it's that internal battle that determines the outcome. And so we have to start there.
All right, Robin, we're going to go ahead and talk about. So you mentioned a couple of these words that we looked at before. One of them was fear. And the other one you did mention about something being scary, right? Making that shift to where it wasn't just all about you, but you having to be the leader in the insurance agency that you had. So now we're going to continue down this honest path. And that is that identity shifts are scary because the old version feels safe, right? For some of us, 8 tracks felt safe. And then the record player felt safe. And then the cassette tape felt safe. And then it was the CD. And now we're like, hold on, it's Amazon and iTunes, right? But the old version always feels safe, especially when we talk about that personal, that internal thing called our identity, Robin.
Yeah, it's so true. What come to my mind as you were talking about those things is now it's AI, right? Now it's Grok and Chat GPT and all this stuff. And that's scary. It is scary because we don't understand it. We don't know about it. I remember when I first started using Chat GPT, I felt like I was cheating.
Hey, Robin, hey, let me tell you. So you say that, and I felt like that for about a split second. And I'm like, And then you and I had that conversation about, large language models and Chat GPT and all these things that were meant to help us. And you were like, Neal, but I don't want to lose who I am and I don't want to lose my value and I want to be authentic. And I was like, yeah, I dealt with that in about 3 seconds, Robin. We're going to have to get over it and grow. But it does, like you said, it's scary. And that's a very real example in the times that we're living in today.
Yes, sir. So there's some fears that we wrote down here that leaders fear. So one of those is leaders fear losing relevance. Losing relevance. Leaders fear losing control. Leaders fear being exposed.
That's a big one
Right?
for me right there, Robin. Before you continue, and I don't know if it's the imposter syndrome or just feeling like we're not good enough, or maybe that one skeleton is going to find its way out of the closet and then destroy decades of work. But the one you just talked about, being exposed, is one where I'm saying, well, if I upgrade my identity, am I going to be exposed as a fraud, or someone going to say, well, who does he think he is? What qualifies him to grow and evolve into this new person?
Exactly. And that was the other one that I was going to mention, is that the leaders fear being judged. And so I agree. You're exactly right. But here's the truth, man. And I want our listeners to write this down. The truth is that the greatest danger is actually staying the same.
Oof.
The greatest danger is not changing then, right? The greatest danger is not exposing yourself. Neal, you and I just talked about this, offline. But the whole idea here is that we have to make these shifts in the various different stages of our life. And if we don't, we're going to remain stuck.
And here's why that's so good, and here's why that's important. And I just want to just drop this in here, Robin, is that because I want to be comfortable. I promise I want to be comfortable. And when I say comfortable, I'm not talking about financially. I'm talking about I just don't want to have to think about anything new, do anything differently. But then also, as a man of faith, as a follower of Jesus Christ, I know that I have a calling. And what I have found in my life, as much as I wish it was not true, is that comfort is the enemy of calling. And so oftentimes when I get comfortable, and ladies and gentlemen, you've heard me say it over and over, when I get comfortable, I have a very select few friends, some guys in my life that I reach out to them and I say, hey, I'm feeling comfortable. And they say, okay, hey, that's the enemy of the calling. And so much so, in fact, that over the past 6 days, yesterday was the sixth day, I had told some very close friends of mine that I felt like I was getting soft. I felt like I had lost my edge. And so, but because since my hip replacement surgery and since finished playing football and things, I had just not pushed myself physically to a place where I had to call on the name of Jesus to help me through a workout, right? And so I'm telling my friend Fremo, and he says, "Hey, what do you want to do about it?" He is a man of action. And I said, "Fremo, create a 2-a-day workout plan for me." So I got to get up early in the morning and I've got to just beat my mind and my body into submission. And then we're going to rest, recuperate, and do the same thing in the evening. Instead of the 5 days, I want 6 consecutive days of the hardest workouts that you can give me. And he undertook the challenge. He says, "Okay, I got it." And so he gave me this workout plan. And I thought I was going to do it by myself. And my wife jumped in with me. And what I realized is that I'm capable of way more than I put myself into because of comfort. And so I would post my videos in our little closed group and I would show them how horrible I felt and what it looked like. But then as a result of that, and here's why I say comfort is the enemy of calling, I was doing this to prove to myself that I still had something, that I could do this thing, that I could get on the brink of quitting and go a little bit further. But in the process, what I realized, Robin, this was nothing about me. In 6 days, my wife learned more about her in her 40 years than she ever had, because she is the wife that's going to walk beside me and in front of me and behind me all at the same time. She says, "We're going to do this together, even if you have to leave me a few feet or a few yards behind." And there were times when my wife from 7 days ago, she would have quit, right? But I said, "Hey, as a good husband, baby, you don't have to do it. You didn't sign up for this." And she says, "I can't be a quitter." And so we were having a conversation today at lunch, Robin, that she saw some things, she found out, and now she can say that comfort is the enemy of calling, all because we put ourselves in uncomfortable situations that were scary, but it was necessary for us to walk into and grow into this new identity that's necessary for what's ahead. And
That's
so
so
thank you for allowing me to share that. I know that wasn't in the plan, but at the
that's so
moment I
relatable.
saw that, I had to share it.
Yeah, that's so relatable. That's real. I think we can all relate to that understanding, that idea. And so as if your calling expands, your identity must expand with it. That's the point. And so we're going to just share a few points now about how leaders can upgrade their identity. So we're going to
Robin,
give
before we go into this, ladies and gentlemen, with what Robin is about to share, here's what I love. If you are in a place where you can physically take notes right now. Robin and I don't usually ask you to take notes, but this is the stuff. This is that road map that's going to help you on your journey to upgrading your identity. And this is the stuff that can make or break not only a month, a quarter, a year, but if you don't upgrade your identity, you might find yourself in the same place decades from now and living a life of regret. So just take a time, grab a pen and paper, or open up your phone note taker as Robin shares this roadmap to upgrading your identity.
Yeah, right on. And so the first one is to audit your identity, right? So you want to ask yourself, what part of me is outdated? No, Neil, don't laugh because we're not talking about wrong. Folks, I didn't say wrong. Say what part of me is outdated? Just outdated. Like I can use the obvious example for a lot of us is using AI. Are you using it? The truth is that it's here and it's changing our society. And if you don't go along with it, you're going to get left behind. I know that might sound opinionated, and it is an opinion, right? But I just believe that the concept is true. And if AI is something that you just you don't agree with it, then forget about that one. Where is the other one? What part of you outdated?
Mhm.
Right? And so just kind of think about that as a leader. The second one is to surround yourself with belief.
Yeah.
Make sure that you have the right voices, because the right voices in your life are going to call out the future you, right? So surround yourself with people that are going to call out the future you. So, Neil and I have always said it. If you're at the head of the class, you're in the wrong class. If you are the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You want to put yourself within circles, within community where people are believing in you and the future, your potential, the possibility, and they're calling that out in you. Surround yourself with belief. And number 3 is to change your environment. Environments shape identity faster than goals do. I was just sharing with Neal that I was on a call earlier today with a mentorship call in my life, if you will. And I was sharing with him some of the things that just helped to pull me along on my journey, and I'm glad that I put myself within this mentorship circle, that we have these regular calls, and they include other growth-minded people that are ahead of me, that are going places, and yet they're there to encourage and challenge and welcome me to grow into becoming the best version of myself. That environment alone has helped me to become a better person, a better version of myself. The 4th one is to adopt new habits that match the new you.
Mhm.
Right? So what are you doing? What are the habits that you are applying? Like right now, if I can share with you, I was sharing with Neal just before this call also. I have some goals that we set that I haven't achieved them as we wind down this year. That reality is hitting me. Well, one of the reasons is because I haven't been doing the habits that needed to be done in order to make that happen. There's no kidding yourself. Neal, what's the 11th commandment?
Thou shalt not kid thyself.
Thou shalt not kid thyself. I had to remind myself of that. So the point there is that our habits have to change to match the new you. The other one is practice becoming the future you. Practice becoming the future you. So every day you're going to take small reps of the leader that you're becoming. You're taking small steps of the leader that you're becoming. So you're stepping into it every day as you move forward. It doesn't happen overnight, and you don't have to wait for it to happen to get started. The idea is to get started and then take reps every day. Just like Neal talked about his 6 workouts, if you will. It's the same concept. You're just taking those steps every day. And then after day 6, you look back and realize, wow, look at what we have done.
Look at what we've done. So, Robin, first of all, thank you for sharing that roadmap to a new identity, especially at the time of year that we're recording this. Now, we don't know when you're listening to it, but it's never too early or too late to accept a new identity, to be intentional about who you're going to become. So if you're feeling like you're hitting a ceiling, maybe it's not a strategy issue, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe it's an identity invitation into your higher identity.
And your next level is waiting on the next version of you. Hear me on this. Sometimes I've had to learn this the hard way. And I promise you, the future you is stronger, is clearer, and is more capable than the older one ever was. And that's the beauty of it.
And here's how we started. The old you got you here, and we're glad you're here, wherever your here is. But the new you, that new identity, will get you there, and that's the goal.
And so don't be afraid. Be encouraged today. Everybody has to go through it. The people who you look up to, the people who you aspire to become like, they had to go through it as well. So don't be afraid to evolve. That's what it's really all about. It's about learning, growing, and changing. It's about evolving. And so as we wind this down today, we're so glad that you're a part of this community, the Big Life Podcast. We appreciate you. We appreciate your feedback. If this has added value to you, we ask for you to subscribe. We ask for you to share this with somebody else. We ask for you to leave a review. And that would be very helpful. First of all, it gives us good feedback. But second of all, it allows others to get this same sort of information as well.
Oh, absolutely. The first thing I want to share is Robin, thank you, because as we are recording this, it's a few weeks away from the new year. But I want to tell you, Happy New Year, brother.
Amen. Same to you, my brother. It's been an
And to
amazing 2025.
It has been an amazing year. And so here's what I want to tell all of you. Do not wait. So I know the date that this episode is coming out. Do not wait 24 hours to create or to start a New Year's resolution. Start today, right? There's no better time to embrace and to look at your identity and to evolve than today, because it's the only day, the only moment that we're guaranteed. And so Robin and I, the Big Life Podcast, we want to wish you a happy new year on the calendar, but hopefully today will be the first day of your new life with this big, full identity as you become the person that you're supposed to be so that you can live the big life. And so we just want to say thank you again. Now, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, as Robin said, but most importantly, do something with the information, do something with the ideas, do something with maybe the fresh perspective that you've unlocked today. And so as we leave you for the last time in 2025, it's only right that we remind you that we love you. God loves you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And until the next time we see you or you see us in 2026, we're right there with you.
And Happy
Peace.
New Year.
Happy New Year. Oh, are we supposed to sing the song Old Longs? No, okay, we won't sing it. Happy New
You can
Year.
sing
Happy New Year, family.
Happy New Year.